Hi, I'm James McGuire, and today we're talking about data in the cloud. Definitely a hot topic with a lot of different trends and macro trends going on. To discuss that, I'm joined by a very special guest. With me is Kent Graziano, Chief Technical Evangelist at Snowflake. Kent, very good to have you with us today.
Hey, great to be here, James. Thanks for having me on.
Sure. I mean, and you work for Snowflake. I mean, imagining that, it helps you get tables at restaurants because people's like, oh, he works for Snowflake. There's all that buzz. I mean, do people talk to you like, oh, you work for Snowflake?
Well, they used to when I was traveling pre-pandemic. I'd get on a plane and people would look at my luggage tag that said Snowflake and go, "Oh, Snowflake, I've heard of that." But this last year, not quite so much. Haven't been out too much.
To be sure, though, I mean, the company is definitely getting a lot of buzz. I mean, I often will do interviews like this with three or four data experts, and I'll say, okay, the first person uses the word Snowflake gets 5,000 bonus points. And everyone gets the joke because they all know it. And of course, then there's Warren Buffett, of all people, bought into Snowflake pre-IPO, which I think he hasn't done that in years and years. He basically doesn't do that, but he made an exception for the sake of Snowflake. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was, and that certainly created a lot of buzz because it had my family members who really only barely understand what it is I do. We're commenting on it and calling us and going, "Wow, I saw Warren Buffett's investing in the company that you work for." It's like then you know it's made an impact when you have people outside the industry noticing.
Right, right. That's pretty amazing. So let's talk about, why it's buzzy. I mean, Snowflake, I think of as an enterprise data platform with many different features, but why in essence is the buzz? Why is it so hot? It's cloud native, but beyond that, even.
It's the world's changed so much with all of the data that's out there, and people really, companies need a way to innovate and be more agile. And what we're seeing with our platform is that people are able to do that. I mean, they can come in, they can start really, really small, small company, and grow to massive size, going into petabytes of data with no management overhead, really, right? It's made it so much easier than like when I started in the industry 30 years ago, where you had to pre-plan everything and you really had to know where are we going to go.
Hmm.
What's our 3-year 5-year plan? How much data do we think we're going to have? How many users do we think we're going to have? Well, we don't have to do that anymore. And that's one of the things that I loved about Snowflake, because I came in, I was really a data architect
Uh-huh.
and a modeler and designer. And it's like, well, this is great. I can actually now work with the business, figure out what data do we really need, what kind of a model should it go into, and very quickly get that up and running without having to worry about, well, are we going to have enough disk space? Are we
Hmm.
going to have enough compute? How many users will we really have? And I have to size for all that. I don't have to do any of that with Snowflake. So that really
Hmm.
allows me to accelerate the delivery of the value to the business.
You're saying it's in contrast to the old days where maybe a large data mining or data analytics application would have been in-house, and that would have been far less scalable than the current model of Snowflake. Am I getting you right there?
Yeah. I mean, it's the on-premises world by definition, you were constrained to a box, right?
Right,
It's a
right.
server. It's got
Hmm.
so many CPUs in it, and it's got so much disk space when you initially buy it. And yes,
Right,
you could get to the point where we could plug in SANs and we could add more disk, but you still had
hmm,
to plan for that, and then you had to go through a procurement process. I
right.
had times when I was building large data warehouses where we told the infrastructure team we're going to need 10 terabytes,
Hmm.
and they laughed at us and said, well, no, you won't. And they got us 2 terabytes. And then 3 months
Right,
later, we were out of space. And then we
right.
had to wait 6 weeks to get more disk space. And so that
Ah,
obviously that slowed our ability to deliver to the business down because we
right.
just physically didn't have the infrastructure. Snowflake, you add data in and it elastically just grows. You don't have to
Interesting.
pre-allocate it. It's just there on demand. And I don't have to be a DBA or system administrator to do anything.
Mhm.
I load the data in, and it's automatically there.
Right. Yeah, automagically technology is pretty cool technology. I mean, is it, what about the multi-cloud piece? I mean, is it that it works with any of the clouds? And part two of that question is, the cloud providers themselves offer data applications, many of them. I mean, why not just use a data application used by, offered by one of the hyperscalers already?
Well, to answer the first part of the question, is
Yeah.
it works on AWS, Azure, and GCP. So
Uh-huh.
Snowflake is cloud agnostic. So if you're
Right.
when you're in Snowflake and you're in the data cloud, you're in the data cloud. And it
Right.
doesn't matter what the underpinnings are.
Hmm.
And what that is giving people the ability to now is build a true network of data that is, I'll say, location independent and cloud
Mm.
independent.
Yeah.
And again, without that infrastructure management overhead that I was referring to before,
Hmm.
is even you can go in and you could build something on one of the clouds. Well, then how do you get that information to another cloud or to
Right.
another part of the world even, right?
Hmm.
And usually that means you still got to export the data into probably flat files and transport it over to the other platform. And if it's a different infrastructure, different protocols, there may be some other things you have to do. With Snowflake, it's totally seamless and
Right.
able to share between all these different locations. And that's where our customers are seeing so much value, because it just makes it's I almost have sometimes say brain dead simple, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
set up and it's in place. User logs in, the data is just there. And we aren't having to spend weeks and months and years doing a lot of complex engineering in order to make this happen. Right. We, of course, did inside of Snowflake. That's what we do. Right. That's what
Right.
our brilliant engineers have built and what our founders came up
Right.
with our global data mesh. And that's all there as part of the service. And that's kind of the beauty of it, that's allowing companies to really take a lot more advantage of the data, because they can focus on that instead of on the logistics and the engineering aspects of the infrastructure.
Right. Let me ask one more question on that part, and I'm going to be over my head here, so like I may or may not understand what's going on in that. There's this central repository. It's Snowflake. It's cloud independent. Does that mean the data actually exists there, or is the data exist in other places that is being virtualized by Snowflake as a platform?
Uh, yeah, the data has a home. It does have a
Right.
home in a
Right.
particular physical location,
Mhm.
and yeah, the Snowflake software is managing I don't like the word replication, but replication, if you will, under the
Mhm.
covers. It's not virtualization. When we talked about virtualization software, we're talking about, okay, the data is over here, and we're looking over there,
Right.
and
Right.
we still have to pull it somewhere. But with Snowflake, our global data mesh is allowing that data to be replicated seamlessly to where it needs to be, where you want it to be. So
Yeah.
it's localized. So you're
Hmm.
not, in London querying data in Australia, though it looks like that's what you're doing, right? The data
Right.
originated in Australia, but you don't have to care now. And this is like the beauty of the cloud, is you don't have to care where the hardware is, where the data is. And then when you throw Snowflake's data cloud on top of it, now you really don't need to care,
Hmm.
right? That
Hmm.
it's handling all of that for you.
Yeah. Well, all right, I get it. That's pretty cool. Makes sense that Snowflake is buzzy considering it's doing those various things. There's an interesting report. It's put out by The Economist. It's a survey. It's commissioned by Snowflake, and it talks about a lot of the key data trends. We should get to that, but first let's touch on the idea of cloud and the movement of data to the cloud has really accelerated in the last couple of years, even before COVID. What do you think is driving that change? And it sounds like you've sort of talked about it in terms of the flexibility and scalability of it.
Yeah, and it's the realization that the road to innovation, and therefore really continued success for global organizations, is paved with data. And the
Hmm.
amount of data is growing at just such an exponential rate, that as I said, the old on-premises systems just couldn't keep up. And so with all
Right.
these rapid changes we see in like business models and the growth of the data, it means businesses have to really become more agile.
Hmm.
The cloud's given us that opportunity with this on-demand elasticity, the ease of access, makes it an obvious choice to move analytics and really compute intensive workloads into the data cloud. So if an organization really wants to become data driven and democratize the data across their entire organization, this is really the simplest and most cost-effective way to consolidate all those data silos and really try to achieve the goal of getting value from that asset, and really treating data now truly as an asset to deliver business value.
It's interesting. The report finds that 87% of the executives agree that data is the most important competitive differentiator in the business landscape today. But I think there's a problem. I mean, the core challenge that businesses face, and it's a really stubborn challenge, is extracting value from that data. You've talked a little about this, but I mean, how does the cloud make that possible, and why is it so hard, and how does the cloud help that?
Yeah, I mean, it's for the executives, the challenge is identifying which data, that's in their microcosm of the data universe is going to be the most useful to them, and which data is going to really enable them to understand what's happening in the business and respond to the changes and all of that. And that's really the big challenge, is how is it going to be able to drive more insights and finding that data. It's not easy, because it's all over the place, right? And now it's not only is it scattered among a variety of ERP systems and back office systems, potentially now it's scattered even across multiple clouds. And so trying to transform their data environment into something that's more seamless, that brings all that data together in one place. And now we're talking about social media as well, right? Social media, IoT sensors, all of that is like needing a place to get that single view, if you will, right, across it. That is really the big challenge. And if they can't get access to that data in a seamless way and interpret what it's saying to them, then how are they going to manage and scale their business really to be effective? And so it's incumbent on them. They really have to come up with, how are we going to be effective in our data analytics, data science, machine learning, all of that. That's really a prerequisite for them to be successful.
Right. Well, you talk about the location of the data and how it can move and be flexible, and it's very seamless. What about the data itself in terms of Snowflake's role in the marketplace? In other words, is Snowflake competing against the other data analytics companies by offering data analytics software? Is Snowflake competing with the New Relics and the Tableaus of the world?
No, though. I mean, Tableau is one of our biggest partners. I mean, Salesforce was another one of the big organizations that invested in Snowflake, and Tableau is part of Salesforce. So many of our customers run on Tableau dashboards. Even Snowflake internally, we're using Tableau, so we're not trying to compete with them.
So Snowflake is actually using the Tableau dashboard. I love that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, that's we have a lot of things in that, and it's you'll see more and more things from our CIO Sunny about Snowflake on Snowflake. But we, as he likes to say, we drink our own champagne, but that includes working with our partners. So we've always had great ecosystem partners on the data engineering, data movement side, but also on the BI side, like Tableau. And so we are not trying to compete with them. What we're trying to provide is really the underpinnings for that entire data analytics ecosystem, that we can have all of the data in one place and really kind of streamline that process, so that they can eliminate the silos and really get that 360-degree view of the data, and at the same time make that data available across the organization for different uses and different use cases, like not only dashboards, but data science and machine learning, application development, all sorts of things. But having sort of that single point, because then that of course gives them the data governance, right? The fewer moving parts that you have, the easier it is to govern that data, track that data. And with all the compliance regulations we have now, that's a very important aspect of all of this.
So compliance really is a big part of the picture, and that, of course, one of the headaches with compliance is our data could be any number of different places. Maybe it's not walking out. Hopefully, it's not walking out the door with a thumb drive. But so you're saying that by giving this central repository, Snowflake actually helps compliance.
Oh yes, and it's a big point with our largest customers that that one of the things have said to us is they love about Snowflake is they've got a better handle on data governance.
Hmm.
Again, by eliminating all those moving parts, being able to consolidate all those silos and all that data inside of the data cloud. Well, now they know where it is, and they can track it, and they see who's using it, and then they can put controls on it once, right? So we can use now we have dynamic data masking, which is policy based. So they can set a policy that says these type of people can see this data, cannot see this data. For some, it is just completely obfuscated. Some of it is masked, so they can kind of see it, but it's masked. And so all the different levels of privacy can be accommodated in a very easy way. And when you have your data centrally located, that means you can do it once, right? And so this is a great one-to-many model. And that even works within, within our data sharing. So the data marketplace that Snowflake has, and you can have data exchanges where you can curate the data once and put policies on it to control which aspects of the data can the consumer see, based on their roles and responsibilities.
Interesting. Well, let's talk about some of the various roles that professionals might have, say developers, or data scientists, or data analysts. How does Snowflake expand or transform what some of those individuals can do?
Well, number one is the elimination of the silos, right? So having one source of truth. So now you can have your data scientists and your data analysts, that really are looking at the same data, because the worst case scenario that's always existed in the data world is the CEO gets a report from two different divisions and say customer analysis, and he gets two different counts of how many customers they have.
Right.
Because the data was coming from different places and nobody had that consolidated location. So now you've got, your developers can be building out new data products using the same data that the data scientists are using to do the long-term forecasting and building out some, predictive algorithms. And it's the same data that your day-to-day business analyst is accessing. So we're never at cross purposes here anymore. Nobody's having to argue about whose data is correct. We're all in, as we would say, violent agreement. This is the data, because there's only one place. There's one version of the truth, and it's governed. And so we know where people are looking, and we know it's like, here you have access, here's the data we want you to use. So even as you're doing data discovery and refining your raw data, you can control who has access to that, so that you really are sure that people are looking at the same data, and we're going to get the same conclusions and the same answers.
There's no such thing as fake news, because we have to agree on the truth. It's there. It is. It's in hard cold print.
Yes.
For data professionals and developers specifically, let's talk about, drill down to them. Very important cohort. What are some of the advantages of using Snowflake for these folks?
Well, for one, you've got the low code, no code, elastic infrastructure, right? So number one, one of the biggest challenges for a developer was, where do I do my work? Right? Can I get a copy of the data? Well, we've got, with zero copy cloning in Snowflake, and we can instantly spin up sandboxes, development and QA environments that can be complete replications, but they're not. They're clones. They're zero copy clones of a production environment. And I know throughout my career in the data space, we always dreamed of, wouldn't it be great if we could have like a full copy, full size production set of data to test against, so that when we moved it into production, it didn't fail because it couldn't perform, or because we didn't have a full sense of the data. Well, now we can do that. So you have that. So you can spin up development, QA environments instantly with zero copy cloning. So that's, and it's a single command. So easy. Wow. Then on the data sharing that we're talking about, a lot of developers have spent, probably months, years writing code on how are we going to get the data out of our system to share with a partner, or having to write an API wrapper around it of some sort. Well, with data sharing in Snowflake, they simply curate the data that needs to be shared into a data mart effectively, and create a share, single command, create a share. And then they grant access to another Snowflake account holder, and they can query it just like it, and to them, it looks like a database, right? And it's a database in their database. And it's gotten just so much more flexible to be able to do that, and more agile, because you can really make these things available so much faster. And then of course we have the data marketplace. So if you're a developer and you're trying to come up with a new algorithm, and you need some external data, you can look on the Snowflake data marketplace. And again, it's a couple of clicks and you now have access to this data set that you didn't have before. And now you can merge that in with whatever it is you're building. And so it just gives you that incredible amount of flexibility to develop whatever it is you're trying to develop. And like I said, reverse to do a data product. This concept of data products I find fascinating. It's like, we're not just talking about dashboards and reports now. We're talking about a curated data set that serves a specific purpose, and you can build that and then share it with the world effectively through the Snowflake data marketplace if you want to. Or if it's something that's more proprietary and it's something that will enable your collaboration with a business partner, you can do it through a private data exchange in Snowflake. And so one's kind of like a private app store, and then I think of the marketplace as a app store for data, right? So it just depends on what level of control you need on the data, how sensitive the data is, how you would choose to publish it.
So those data products, I mean, I guess what level of technical expertise is required to create one of those data products? If I'm a staffer and I want to create one for a partner, do I need to call the developers, or how does that work?
Well, it again depends on what kind you're looking of product you're looking at, and what kind of wrapper you want to have around it. If it's simply a data set, well, then you're going to need to be kind of at least a data analyst type that you can specify, okay, I want to share this data and I want to share this data, and put it in it. And it's a fairly simple interface to do. If you want to, if it's a little fancier, okay, you might need a developer to build a front end for it in order to access it. The consumer side is the part that gets really easy, because once it's exposed in a data exchange or in the data marketplace, it is literally, you go like you would on Amazon, and you put in a couple of search words looking for, say, COVID-19 data.
Right.
And boom, here's the list, and it's click and subscribe, and there it is, and it appears. So it's become a lot easier. A lot of our customers have said they can deliver data products so much faster now, because it is quite simple to do. Once they've got that data consolidated in one place, then it's more about what exactly do we want to share and with who, what kind of governance do we need on it, put the policies in place. And you do need to be, a bit of a technical developer to create those. But the creating of the exchanges and things is a lot of point and click, as it were, in our UI to do some of that.
Fascinating. Well, I mean, to wrap things up, I'd love to get your sense of the future. I mean, the future of the enterprise data platform, maybe even more interesting, the future evolution of Snowflake. And as you answer, I'm going to be listening to hear you say the words artificial intelligence, which I don't think we've used the AI, or maybe we've glanced over.
I mentioned it once, yeah.
You did. Okay, so we've checked that box. But I somehow, when I'm expecting you to use the word AI when you talk about the future of Snowflake, but the question is yours to answer as you see fit, please.
Yeah, so I really see, the future of data platforms is obviously it's the cloud, but it's going way beyond what we traditionally thought of just your basic analytics, right, and dashboards. That it is growing into that world of machine learning and artificial intelligence as the source for all that information. And one of the things we've learned about machine learning is the more data you have, the more accurate the results are going to be.
Right.
And now we have that ability to scale to multiple petabytes in the data cloud. So you have so much more data available to start feeding machine learning and AI types of applications, and making it easy through the sharing aspects, through the network of the data, to be able to take that data and get your third party and your partner data and incorporate that all into the data that your organization creates themselves, and then be able to massage that, do your algorithms and projections off of that, and perhaps produce a data product that others don't have, and then share that right back. And it becomes a virtuous cycle. And so we're really evolving into basically the World Wide Web of data. Right? So where you're going to be able to find the data you need to do the job you need to do, and to make the predictions and forecasts, and work with your customers and provide better customer service and provide more value to your stakeholders. And to me, that's way beyond. It is probably the vision that we had 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Right.
But it took a lot of work to really make that happen. And only the largest organizations could ever afford to do it. Now, smaller organizations can do it because of the power that we now have with the data cloud in particular. I think, I guess, we're talking about the cloud, the sky's the limit, right? Again, at this point. And I think that we will see, you mentioned artificial intelligence. We're going to get smarter. Right? The Snowflake engine is already pretty smart. And it runs off of metadata. We have an advanced optimization engine. We are metadata driven. And I think over time, we are going to see more machine learning and AI involved under the covers. Right? To make it a more seamless experience, and to make it a more performant experience as the volumes of data grow and grow. I wrote about this a couple of years ago. Is like, when you have all of this data available and you know how it's being used, then it's just a matter of time before we can be even more predictive about what data do you need, what data, how are you going to use it? What kind of questions you're going to ask, and how can we give you the best performance for those particular questions? And we're starting to see some things like that, like our search optimization feature that just came out is another really smart way of being able to query the data to get the performance that you need. Again, reduce that time to value even more.
So in essence, what I'm hearing is that data becomes far faster, far more flexible to shape and imagine and mold as any individual sees fit. And at the same time, it's also democratized for smaller players to get on board.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yes.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I think it's leveling the playing field to a certain extent, which means that
which cloud did itself.
Right. Yeah. So you're going to be able to, the folks that are really innovative and are going to have opportunities that they might not have had before to even compete with their bigger peers, if you will. And much like Snowflake is doing ourselves.
Right. Okay, I think you said it. It's I find it to be fascinating. I'm going to keep an eye on the company for sure. I know you've got a busy day. I will let you get back to it, but I totally appreciate you sharing your expertise today. Thank you.
You're welcome.